Good Tuesday morning, and thank you for joining us here on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Jason Hackett. Let's get right to your headlines. This morning, the polls are open for a primary election to fill the late Melissa Hortman's House seat in District 34B. Right now, there are 3 DFL candidates and 1 Republican. Aja Russo is at a polling center in Brooklyn Park.
A lot of the candidates are acknowledging the tragic circumstances that made today's primary necessary, while also noting the legacy of former Speaker Melissa Hortman. Now, on the GOP side, there's only one candidate. This is a political newcomer. This is Realtor Ruth Bittner. Things are a little bit more competitive on the DFL side. So the candidates there are current Brooklyn Park City Council member Christian Erickson, former Brooklyn Park City Councilor XP Lee, and Hennepin County Prosecutor Erickson Say. Now, this district regularly votes blue. It covers parts of Brooklyn Park, stretching all the way up to Anoka County. And former Speaker Hortman was a DFL party leader. And you may remember earlier this year, the parties ended up tied in the House 67-67. That ended up leading to a power sharing agreement. Now, this primary will feed into the main special election that's happening on September 16th. And that special election will determine whether or not those margins remain tied up in the House or if things change. Now, polling ends at 8 o'clock tonight. Back to you.
In St. Paul, residents in Ward 4 will elect a new city council person today. 4 people are running for the spot left open by former St. Paul City Council President Mitra Jalali, who resigned earlier this year to focus on her mental and physical health. Polls are open until 8 tonight. Happening today, the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners is expected to pass a resolution to take over management of HCMC to help with a major budget shortfall. The move would dissolve Hennepin Healthcare's current board, and commissioners would take on oversight of the system. According to officials, HCMC is on track to lose $50 million this year, marking a 7th straight year of losses. It appears enough commissioners have expressed interest to pass it. New details this morning on the group behind the cyber attack in St. Paul. Officials confirmed the group did demand a ransom, and when the city refused to pay, the group posted stolen data online. The group is called Interlock, and experts say they're known for using a double extortion technique. Mayor Melvin Carter says the group mostly took data from the Parks and Rec Department, including work documents, copies of IDs, and even recipes. While residents' personal info was not compromised, some city services are still shut down. The mayor isn't saying how much ransom was, but says the investigation will be costly.
Those costs are significantly less than it would cost us to not take those measures. And so that's why we choose this posture in an emergency situation.
Thousands of city workers are required to now do in-person password resets and a device security check. Happening right now in Moorhead, the BCA is investigating a use of force incident where 2 people were hurt. Police say the 2 people who were hurt were not officers. So here's a look at where that investigation is underway. Moorhead is about 3 hours northwest of the Twin Cities, right across the border from Fargo. Michelle Beck is at the live desk with what we've learned.
Let's look at this overnight post from the BCA. State authorities there are calling this a use of force incident, which generally means officers were the ones to use some kind of force. Moorhead police say they've been on scene, so has a regional SWAT team. Now in this video, you can see a child being carried away. A neighbor said they were taken to an ambulance. That same neighbor saying based on what police told them, children were being held hostage, and that involved a gun on the top floor of an apartment. Right now, Moorhead police are telling reporters this was an active disturbance. Officers were called around 9 last night to the cross streets of 3rd Avenue North and Highway 75. The sergeant on scene said during the investigation, 2 people were hurt. Officers, he added, were not injured.
The apartment was surrounded. They had spotlights looking everywhere. We've seen 1 child be carried out so far into an ambulance. There's been SWAT teams here. Yeah, it's scary. I have no idea what's actually going on.
Now, the police sergeant didn't say whether anyone was in custody, but that the community is safe. Now, you are still asked to stay clear of the area because investigators, guys, have a lot to look into. Back to you.
Michelle, thank you. Right now, a Target store in Austin, Texas is a crime scene. 3 people, including a child, shot and killed in broad daylight. The suspect was captured after a short manhunt. Police say he stole 2 cars trying to escape. He's not been named publicly, but investigators say he has a mental health history. No word yet on a motive. This morning, the current air quality alert across Minnesota is set to expire. This is a look at the conditions here in the Twin Cities. You can see some areas are in the orange, which means unhealthy for sensitive groups, but things are improving. But this alert is just one of many we've had to deal with all summer. And now another Minnesota lawmaker is pressing for answers about Canada's handling of the wildfires. State Representative Elliot Engen of Lino Lake sent a letter this month asking for a comprehensive review of Canada's wildfire management, also raising questions about how Canada is managing its forests. But forestry experts like Lee Freilich at the University of Minnesota say there's nothing Canada can do about that right now.
The way to fix it would have been to address climate change 30 years ago, but we failed to do that. And there actually is not a way to fix it at this point. I mean, we should still try to limit the amount of climate warming in the future. You could change the way the forest is managed, but it would take 20 or 30 years before it impacted the landscape as a whole. With the remoteness of that area, there's no way you can fight those fires.
Engen and Republican lawmakers also asked the EPA to do air quality testing in Minnesota. In Canada, the head of the Fire Chiefs Association has also called on the country to establish a national wildfire agency. A look at the markets as Wall Street reacts to 2 major money stories. New data this morning shows the Consumer Price Index, which is a key indicator of inflation, rose 0.2% in July, which was not as much as expected. Numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics show food and energy prices remain steady. Also, the U.S. and China are pushing back today's self-imposed deadline to reach a trade deal. An executive order signed by President Trump last night keeps the U.S. rate for Chinese imports at 30%. Meanwhile, China confirms its duties on U.S. imports will stay at 10%. Those current tariff amounts will remain in place another 90 days as negotiations continue before the new deadline on November 10th. A look for our nation's capital this morning, where President Trump is declaring a public safety emergency and sending National Guard troops to the streets of Washington, D.C. That's despite statistics showing violent crime rates in the city are actually down. The mayor of D.C. calling the move unsettling and is promising to work to maintain trust and safety. NBC's Alice Barr is in Washington with details.
Hi there. A White House official tells NBC News that the National Guard troops hitting the streets of D.C. will be tasked with protecting federal assets and deterring violent crime.
Because you'd be safe.
Following an unprecedented order from President Trump, hundreds of National Guard troops are expected on the streets of Washington, D.C., beginning today, according to a White House official, to crack down on crime.
We're declaring public safety emergency in the District of Columbia.
The president deploying the Guard and taking federal control over the D.C. Police Department for up to 30 days without congressional approval, citing violent crimes like a recent attack on a former DOJ employee during an attempted carjacking.
Historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor.
But the move comes when the U.S. Attorney's Office said in January that violent crime in D.C. was at a 30-year low, Metro Police noting a 26% drop since last year. Though the head of the police union says that's not the feeling on the ground, arguing crime stats have been manipulated and calling any talk of a recent drop in crime preposterous. Protesters speaking out, pointing to President Trump's recent move to send thousands of National Guard troops to Los Angeles this summer to tamp down on immigration protests, and his comments that federal intervention in other cities like New York and Chicago could be next.
Trump does not care about D.C.'s safety. He cares about control.
The Attorney General of D.C. said he was exploring legal options. The D.C. mayor called the president's actions
unsettling and unprecedented,
while promising to work with the federal government to keep the city safe.
Unlike in the states, the president has direct control over the D.C. National Guard. Still, the move he's undertaking here represents another step in testing the boundaries of how U.S. troops can be used in American territory. The D.C. City Council is accusing the White House of a manufactured intrusion on local authority. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
We have an update this morning on the dried out Lake Alice at William O'Brien State Park, just north of Stillwater. The DNR says they're assessing how long it'll take to fix a valve in a dam separating the lake from the St. Croix River. Staff at the park had opened it earlier this summer to stop the lake from overflowing, and now it's stuck open, emptying the lake. They should know more by the end of the week. Stick with us, more news and weather coming up after the break.